How's it going, my busy bunch of bakers? Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. Welcome back to another video. Today we are making a very unique bread which contains more potatoes than flour. Is it still bread? You be the judge. Let's get in the kitchen and get started. We all know by now that a potato is one of the best dough improvers out there, and I have made a full video on the use of potatoes in bread making. You can find that in the Principles of Baking playlist. And you can also find a few potato bread recipes on the channel. Usually the amount of potatoes used is quite low, but not too long ago I posted a recipe in which I replaced all the liquid with mashed sweet potato, and it worked extremely well. But the thing with sweet potato is that it's less starchy, which makes it a lot wetter. In order to replace all the liquid in the recipe with mashed white potato, we need to use quite a bit more. If we're talking baker's percentage, this recipe has a 133% potato content. So let's look at the ingredients that we'll use today. We'll need some white bread flour, yeast, salt, butter, an egg yolk, an egg white for glazing, and some sesame seeds for decoration, and of course we'll need a potato. Use a yellowish potato for best results. A waxy potato, which is good for making mash, will be perfect for making bread. When it comes to the equipment, we'll need a tray with some non-stick paper, a pan for boiling the potato, a bowl for mixing our dough in, we'll need scales, a dough scraper, a temperature probe, a brush, and something to mash the potato with. A fork could do the job well enough, but if you have a dedicated potato masher like this one, then use it. The smoother you can get the potato, the better. Okay, let's begin. It all starts with preparing and cooking the potato. Peel the potato, cut it into large chunks, place it in a pot of water, set it on high heat, and cook it for around 25 minutes until it's completely soft. And while I'm preparing the potato, let me just tell you why we're doing this at all. I make many of my videos as answers to the questions that you leave under some of my other videos. And some time ago, someone had a question of how much potato we could add to bread dough. Obviously, 133% is not the limit. We could add more to this dough. It all depends on how you want your bread to be. When used in moderation, potatoes make the bread extra light and puffy. When used in excess, like in this recipe, the potatoes make the bread extra moist and squishy. It's very soft still, but it's quite heavy. It would make some great sturdy burger buns. The potato here is already full of gelatinized starch, but I still decided to scald a portion of the total flour, using the boiled potatoes. This will ensure that the bread stays softer for even longer. So after boiling, weigh out the required amount of potato, add the flour, the salt and the butter to it, and then mash it all up. The butter and the egg yolk in this recipe work against the heaviness of the potato. They will make these buns slightly softer. Okay, once the scald is fully mixed and nice and smooth, cover it up and leave it to cool down completely. It will take around 2 to 3 hours at room temperature. You could place it in the fridge to cool it down sooner. I left the mix to cool down to around 26 degrees Celsius or 79 degrees Fahrenheit. The dough will be heavy, that's why I want it to be slightly warmer, and I'm also using slightly more yeast than I normally would. Both the higher temperature and the higher yeast content will help this dough puff up more effectively. Okay, to continue, add the yeast and the egg yolk to the scald, then give it all a good mix. Make sure that the yeast is dispersed evenly throughout the mix and there are no lumps. Finally, add the remaining flour, grab your dough scraper and mix it to a dough. It will be a little bit sticky, but that's normal. There is more mashed potato here than all the other ingredients combined. Okay, once it's fully mixed, give it a fold and place it in a clean bowl. Then take its temperature. My dough turned out pretty warm at around 27 degrees Celsius or 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which is good. My kitchen is at around the same temperature. With these temperatures, bulk fermentation will take no more than 1 hour. We'll punctuate the bulk fermentation with one fold halfway through. So cover the dough up, let it ferment for 30 minutes, and then remove it from the bowl and give it a fold. Folding will develop the gluten structure and ensure that the dough is fermenting evenly. Drop the dough out on the table with the smooth side down, then flatten it out, fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until reach point where it started. Then flip it smooth side up again, tighten it against the table, and that's your dough ball done. Place it back into the bowl, cover it up, leave it to ferment for another 30 minutes. Once it's looking nice and puffy, we can continue by weighing it, dividing it, and pre-shaping it. This recipe makes 6 chunky buns. If you want them to be even bigger, you can divide the dough into 5. Or if you want them to be smaller, you can divide the dough into more pieces. You can even leave it whole and make a nice little loaf out of it. In fact, this would make a great sandwich bread. If I was to bake this in my USA pan Pullman tin, I would increase all the amounts of the ingredients by 25%. But back to pre-shaping. Once your dough has been divided, flatten it out and shape it the same way as you performed the fold earlier. After you're done, cover it with cling film and leave it to rest for 15 minutes to let the gluten relax, which will make it easier to perform the final shaping. Of course, the reason for shaping the dough twice is to ensure that the dough balls turn out nice and uniform. I decided to line my baking tin with some paper. The dough balls themselves should not stick, but because I'm planning to glaze them with egg, that may cause an issue, and I don't want to take the risk. Okay, to perform the final shaping, place the dough ball with the smooth side down on the table, flatten it out, then fold the edge over the middle, go around in a circle to reach point where it started. Then flip it smooth side up again, tighten it against the table, and then pick it up and pinch the seam together at the bottom. Again, it's the same process as the fold and the pre-shaping, which we performed earlier. You can use a larger tray and space the dough balls out. That way, you'll get round buns. I was going for that squarish look, and I also decided to brush some butter between my buns so they don't stick together. Okay, let's cover them up and leave them for the final proof, which will be pretty quick, at around 45 minutes. Be sure to preheat the oven during this time to 170 degrees Celsius, 340 Fahrenheit, fan on. If your oven doesn't have a fan, go for 190 Celsius or 375 Fahrenheit. These bad boys have puffed up beautifully. There are only a couple jobs remaining before we can bake them. First, we'll glaze them with the egg white, and then we'll sprinkle them with seeds, sesame seeds in my case. There's one thing I like to do to make the seeds stick to the surface of the buns, and that is gently pressing them into the dough. This trick makes a huge difference, and you should always do it. Okay, these bad boys are ready for the oven, so let's get them in there. These buns are not very big, but the dough is moist and heavy. That's why they will take a little bit longer to cook, at around 30 minutes. We want to give the water some time to evaporate. But once the timer is up and you are happy with the color of the crust, they're ready. If you want them to be darker, you can bake them for longer. Using a different glaze would also achieve that. Using a whole egg instead of an egg white would make a huge difference. But there you go, that's how you make bread out of potatoes. It is quite an interesting creation. The only other time I can recall making a bread which contained more of some other ingredient than flour is when I made my super high hydration ciabatta recipe, which contained more water than flour. But that is just hydration. That's a little bit different. It only contained flour, water, yeast and salt, whereas here we have something quite different. And I am quite pleased with the result. The bread is moist, chewy, squishy. It is springy and heavy, but all in a good way. Before I made it, I thought that it would just straight up taste like a potato, but it doesn't. Of course it has a potato-y flavor, but not as much as I thought it would do. I didn't test it this time, but I'm sure that a bread like this would stay soft for a very long time. The main reason for staling is evaporation, but a lot of liquid in this bread is tied up in the starch of the potato and the starch of the flour which we scalded, which will prevent it from losing its moisture very quickly. Do let me know what you think of this recipe, and what is the highest amount of potato that you've ever used in your bread dough. Check out the enriched bread playlist for more squishy and soft buns, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. But that'll be all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.